should I ask next? Because I'm really looking forward to who you want to invite here.
So I have one suggestion, but I also have a backup because I thought you might have already asked her. So my first suggestion is Emily Bache, who I'm actually going to be working with to do some technical coaching. So if she's not already on your list, then she should.
Well, she's on my list, but I haven't invited her, and that's with a lot. I have a list of more than 200 people, but I'm kind of always waiting for excuses to invite people. So now you just gave me the excuse to contact Emily and said, "Hey, look, like." But you can give her the second name as well. But first, tell me a little bit about Emily. Why do you want to invite her?
So Emily is amazing, and she's very highly regarded by a lot of people, and she has been doing technical coaching for a long time now, and she talks and writes about techniques such as test-driven development and continuous integration, and refactoring is a big one for Emily, and she's made this fantastic. If you look for her name is spelt Emily Bache. And you can find her GitHub, and she has a bunch of refactoring exercises on her GitHub, which are so useful. And they're in all of the languages, any language you could possibly imagine, because it's open source and people have contributed. So all of the exercises are available in multiple languages. So all of these really useful refactoring katas. And she's just very, very knowledgeable and experienced about good XP programming practices, and she does a lot of coaching, and she's pretty brilliant. I'm very, very pleased that I'm going to be working with her.
I can imagine. She's really wonderful, sharing, and like you say, is in a kind of open source way, which is something that is very near to me as well. Again, this is about showing your work, but also sharing it with the world and at the whole. Like you say, she shared it, and because of that, lots of other people are sharing their answers in multiple languages. And now all of us, we have so much more value here, and we can learn so much more from that. So that's really nice, and that's how I recognize how she is, I would say, approaching the world in a sense, and that's something I like.
Today, I'm talking with Emily Bache. We talked about her deliberate choice not to stop coding, as that was the fun part for her. We compared practicing music and coding dojos.
I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button, because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello, and hello everyone. With me, I have Emily. And me, or wit, is a little bit strange on the internet, of course, these days. So I'm in Belgium, and you can watch this here, that little blue dot. And Emily is in Göteborg, and then Google Earth will show us a little bit on where we are. It's not that far away from each other. And time zones wise, it's 1938, something like that in Belgium, and I think we're in the same time zone. Is that correct, Emily?
Yes.
So it's around the same time. So we're recording this in the evening for both of us. But I'll jump right into it. So for the few people who don't know you, Emily, tell them a little bit more about who are you, what you want people to know about you.
Well, so I'm a technical coach. My job now is I work with development teams to help them to improve the way they write code. So skills around unit testing and refactoring, working in small steps, working with legacy code in an effective way. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. But my background is as a software developer. I graduated in '98 and got my first job programming then. And I've been hanging out with the extreme programming people and the agile people since I read Kent Beck's book in 2000 and about extreme programming. And so I've been a bit kind of sold on the whole thing since then.
Yeah, and well, you wrote a few books, and for one of them, I think Kent wrote the introduction. Is that correct? The last one?
So yeah, my
You were
most
so
recent book.
lucky.
I was so happy when Kent agreed to write that forward. It was, yeah.
I can imagine, because like you described it, you entered the agile space thanks to Kent, or at least with discovering his book, and so then it must feel really nice to have him write a forward for your books.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm such an admirer of his work, so yeah, it was really kind of him to write something nice about my work as well. So.
Well, and I think a lot of people like what you do with the whole, everything, the practices that you do, the way you bring in everything about the dojos and everything. So, but I'm sure that we'll probably talk some more about some of that stuff later on. Let's move to that first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Well, so I was going to mention my husband here. My husband, Jeff. We've been married for 25 years, and
Woohoo!
we met at university and have been together since. And he's been a huge influence on me and my career, and of course in many ways. But he's been programming his computer since he was like 13, and I did a few courses on programming at university, but it was really only after I left that he encouraged me to really learn to code and help me. So we've spent very little time working at the same company, but in many ways we've had a parallel careers that we've always talked about our work and influence each other, and we've been to quite a few conferences together as well, actually. But yeah, and we're still exchanging new ideas and learning from each other. So it's he's a huge influence on me. So I don't know how unknown that is, but it's
yeah. I assume for many people, their partners, the support of their partners is really crucial to make it at a certain level. But for you, what I'm also hearing is that he kickstarted that, in a sense that he discovered programming before you did, and then he kind of realized that was something that you would like as well, I assume, one way or another.
Yeah, and since I realized how creative programming was, I guess I didn't get into it as a child. Probably some prejudice that it wasn't a thing girls did probably played a role. But when I really started doing programming and discovered how creative it was and how much I actually enjoyed the structure and the way I could make the computer do things, I've been hooked. So it's really thanks to him that I got into it in the first place. But yeah.
It's interesting that you say, because indeed, well, already today it still is a challenge for people because they don't always see that this could be something for women. But in that sense, your partner was also somebody who just ignored that fact that society was thinking that, and just looked at you and realized that that could be something for you. So in that sense, it's also maybe at another level an influence, in a sense. Because, like you say, your environment kind of thought that that would not be for you, and your partner just ignored that and said, no, this is probably something for you, or one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he's not the only person who's encouraged me. I've had a lot of colleagues over the years encouraging me, but I've always found coding fun once I got the hang of it, and I've had opportunities to go to other areas, to be a leader or a manager or a coach more generally. And I've always thought, no, I don't want to stop coding. That's the fun part.
So you kept coming back, or staying basically in the coding. And you thought that you been to conferences with your partner. Did you ever do presentations together or things like that? Because I don't remember seeing you with your partner on stage. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think maybe once or twice. It's the whole approval testing thing. that we have presented about, and because I think Jeff has come up with some really innovative ideas in that space, and he keeps inventing new ways to do testing, and I would. So that's one of the things that he's invented, and I mean, he can do a speech, but I think I don't want to put him down, but I think I'm a little better at making speeches than him, maybe. So it's kind of I'm in some ways the marketing department, and he's coming up with the ideas. But I don't know. Then maybe I'm setting myself short because, of course, I have ideas that feed into what he's doing as well. So yeah,
that's what a partnership is about, of course.
yeah.
You feed each other, and then after a while, you don't know anymore which part was invented by who. You kind of Because I can imagine, well, I hope you have other conversations at breakfast than just the coding and the things. But I can imagine that if you're in a household, especially in the beginning, when both of you are into coding, that could be some kind of conversations you have when you're really stuck on a problem. That it can be helpful to have someone around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have 2 children as well, and they're both utterly decided that they do not want to be programmers. So they obviously get too much of it around over the breakfast table and stuff like that. So yeah.
Oh, because of that, have they seen mommy and daddy around the table and are like, no, not for us.
They want to do their own thing, which I can totally respect. But, so we'll see.
Well, yeah, that's what I would say. What are their ages?
So my oldest daughter is 18 and a younger daughter who's 15.
So that is already an age where they have some idea on where they want to go, even though it might still move in all kind of directions, I would say.
Yeah, there's still time for them to discover they enjoy coding too. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they have another role model in the sense that they see that it's possible for women to do that. So,
yeah.
So in that sense, you are the role model for them, both of you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move then to that other question that if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, what would it become of you? If you were not destined to become a programmer, what was there anything in your past that you were destined to become?
So I've always been quite musical, and I've been singing in choirs since I was very small. And when I was at school, I got really inspired. We had a guest conductor come to the school and take over our school choir, and he taught us to sing gospel and jazz and really fun music. And I started a choir at university doing that kind of music, and I could easily have become a musician in that space. I think that was my alternative career plan. Singing, leading choirs. I don't know quite where it would have ended up, but yeah, that was going to be my thing. So I still sing in choirs today, but it's purely as an amateur.
And was there a conscious decision at some point to say, okay, I'm not going to do this as a career path, or was it just like, okay, I just grow into this programming and that's so much fun that you kind of it went to the back plan, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so when I was at university, that was when I realized I could have taken the music path, and I could see that there was a way to do that, but that I thought, no, I'm gonna stick with the engineering and see where this programming goes, because it's a lot more secure as a job than being a musician, and I think I should try that first. Interesting, my brother was in a similar position. He also got a degree in engineering and did the engineering thing for a bit, and then he went and tried music. And so I watched him do that, and he managed to be a freelance musician for a couple of years, but it was too hard, and he gave up and went back to programming. So I guess that also influenced me.
Hard on the financial part, or hard on an emotional part, or how should I see it?
So all of that. He wanted a job in a top orchestra, and there are a handful.
The competition is hard. Yeah.
In the entire Europe, there's a handful of jobs, and he wasn't lucky enough to get any of them in the time he was looking. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Well, if we think challenges are hard for jobs, I think that's a sector where it's a lot harder. There's a lot more competition, and also a lot more risk. Of course, if something happens to your voice or whatever, to your body, then yeah, basically your career is over, and that could be very easy with, I don't know, an illness or whatever. That yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could see he had a really fun time for a few years when he was doing it, but I think, I think I stuck to engineering and programming, and I'm good with that.
You're happy with it. Okay. Well, the goal of this question was, of course, not to question what people are doing and say you have to go back to the other. Not that, but it's interesting to see. And are there for you any parallels between programming and music? Because do you see links for your brain or for how you do this?
I'm not sure directly. I think, I mean, I've had a lot of music lessons in my time, and I think it's influenced the way I try and teach programming, I guess, and the way I think about improving and skill. But yeah, more at that level than actual music.
Because as a musician, you would practice all over and over, and you would, yeah, musicians. One of the things that people sometimes say is musicians they practice much more, and then they do a few live performances, but they practice much more. Where programming, a lot of it see it as, okay, we are almost immediately live coding, but a lot of what you do with dojos and everything, it's much more practicing and maybe even throwing code away, similar to, okay, you do an area that you practice in your practice room, and then most of that is not recorded and it's just gone. Is that how should I see it? Or?
Yeah, so maybe in some ways, yes, I agree. But I guess I'm more thinking of when I was writing my first book about the coding dojo. It was the period when I was taking my daughter to Suzuki violin lessons like 2 or 3 times a week. So just the teaching methods of how do you get ideas across to and repetition, and how do you make it engaging, and how do you show progress. So just more the ideas about how you teach something, I guess, and yes, practice is a big part of learning to be a musician, and perhaps should be a bigger part of being a programmer. Yeah, there's certainly an element of that.
But also the engaging part, because I can imagine indeed a young child learning how to play the violin. It's if you don't put your fingers exactly right, it just sounds awful. If you have to listen to it just for yourself, probably for your environment, the whole family, it might look awful for a long time. And so how do you keep these children engaged? And that's some of the things you've learned there. You basically, what I'm hearing is you try to see if there are similarities with the programming. That's
yeah. Well, I guess because I got into agile quite early on and learned about testing techniques and stuff. So I spent most of my career trying to get the people around me to do this stuff. So this problem of how do you get people to be enthusiastic about learning new things, and how do you get them to actually put in the work necessary to get the skill, so that when I'm working with them, they actually do write tests, and it's it's.
And how did you learn it yourself? If you look back on your career, because like you said, you jumped in right early in the year 2000 when you read Ken's book. That was it was, I think it was out in 99 or 2000, something like that. So you were there for very early on. How did you learn it? That was it also by basically picking up his book and then applying it and using it all the way? On how should I see the younger Emily doing
Right.
this?
I mean, I read a lot of books. I always have throughout my career, and I think that's meant that I picked up new ideas. But the skill of actually being able to do it, you can't get that just from reading the book. You can kind of get the theory and why. So I guess when Kent's book came out, the JUnit was quite new, and it wasn't even called test-driven development. So in a way, I learned the skills as the books came out, explaining them. And I was lucky to be working with a team of very talented software developers at the time. And they picked up these ideas very quickly too, and were more experienced than me. So a lot of pair programming, a lot of just working with really intelligent people. And so some of it was reading the books and trying out the examples and studying by myself. But yeah, some of it was just working with good people.
Working with good people, and it sounds also similar to what I'm hearing. Maybe I'm just reading into things, but it sounds a little bit like when you were in a choir in school, you had a teacher that was very that inspired you, and you practice in a choir. In my imagination is you practice multiple times a week probably, and you just practice a lot, and you do things together. Hopefully, have fun, but at the same time you learn it, you get feedback. I see a lot similarities with working in a good old extreme programming team. You're surrounded by smart people that give you feedback. You have very small feedback loops that keep improving you and telling you where, or the computer tells you this is not right, and you keep learning. Do I read too much into that, or is that
Yeah, that's definitely been a part of my experience working with but since not all of the time. Some of the time I've been working alone, and some of the time I've been working in a team where the people around me are just totally uninterested in those ideas. So I guess I had that really good experience at first, but then after that there was a lot more of
because your job is to pass it on, that knowledge, and so that by definition you're the most passionate person, because if somebody else would be more passionate, probably they will not hire you, because already something is happening there one way or another, I assume. So it's part of your job now, or do I?
Yeah, today, I guess when I come and work with a team, I'm often either the most experienced developer there or one of them, and then I'm the one injecting the enthusiasm and I guess trying to get things to move, and being that inspiring choir leader, maybe. That's what I'd hope, at least.
Well, if the way I see you watching in the community and the reactions that I hear from people when they follow things that you do or worked with you, I do think that there's a lot of that inspiring leader there. But let's move to the next question, where what do you consider your biggest challenge, and then the next part is, why is that a good thing for you? Or is there something that is for you that is challenging, at least the challenge that you want to share, of course?
Yeah, so this is a very difficult question. A challenge that's a good thing. I guess there's just so many things that I'm interested in, and that I want to do and follow up, and I have to constantly prioritize. And that means that some of the things I want to do I never seem to get to, which is, I've got to prioritize. I only have a number of hours
Limited
a day, and I've managed to fill my time with lots of fun things, but there's so many more fun things I'd also like to do. So that's
and why is that then a good thing for you? Is there something that, because I'm asking because a lot of people find that challenging, setting priorities and doing the things where there is indeed, there's a lot of FOMO in the world. Why I want to do this, I want to do that. So you manage to set some priorities, or at least do it one way or another. What's the good thing for you about that?
Well, the good thing, I guess, is I'm not going to run out of things that I find fun. That's and that there's always something new to try out. I've got options. There's options. I guess to some extent I've tried to build a career so that I'm not going to suddenly find myself with no work and nothing to do. And I think the chances of that happening is fairly minimal, at least at the moment. There's so many avenues I could pursue if the one I'm currently on turns out not to go somewhere.
That's indeed a very nice way of looking at it, because indeed, yeah, it's hard, and then sometimes people want to do work on things. I'm hearing, even if it might be a struggle, you focus on something, but if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, you know that you have, well, maybe not a real backup plan, but at least there is something else where you can focus on. It's interesting. Does it also help you working with clients? Because I can imagine most of your clients have similar kind of problems. I mean, all the companies I work for, they want to do a gazillion things, and of course they never have the budget for all these things, or they don't find the people to doing that. Is having that similar kind of desire for working on a lot of things helping you understanding these customers, or is it getting in the way?
I haven't really seen my clients like that they've got a million things they want to do in a limited budget. I hadn't thought of it in that way. I mean, you're right that everyone is struggling with code that was written in a way that's difficult to test and that they need to change, and they're struggling to retain the best developers and to attract them to stay, and they're struggling to train up the new developers that are coming, and all of those are things that I can potentially help with. So I'm you know, the clients throw these problems at me like, oh, I can do something about that. We could do a training on that, or I could come up with a code kata that would help you learn those skills so you could handle that.
But that also there, you just thrown like a list of 4 or 5 things that clients can come up with you, and so in a way you prioritize then for them. Let's first focus on this, or do they do the priorities? How does that work? Or is it always different?
Well, the way I've been working at the moment is that I persuade some kind of managers in the department that technical coaching would be good for their teams, and that they would upskill their teams, and they maybe would improve the code quality. And then when I get to so I get a budget to, I'm going to work with this team and that team and this other team. And then I get to that team and I talk to them and find out what their situation is. And then I'm like, okay, right, I think this team, we need to do these safe refactorings. Let's focus on learning some safe refactorings. Or this team, you've never seen refactoring tools before. Let's start looking at getting those installed and making sure you've got them, and then making sure you know how to, in what situations you can use them and what the weaknesses are, So it's every time I meet a new team, it's like I can adjust what I'm doing so that it's useful for that situation.
So I'm hearing that you also are very good at, well, I don't know quickly because you didn't say it, but that you're rather good at understanding the biggest problem that a team has, or at least a problem that you can quickly help a team to gain some confidence in the relationship and to gain trust between the team and you. Is this a correct understanding?
At least that's what I hope. I think one of the things I'm actually quite good at is reading code quickly. So I normally ask them to bring some code samples to our first meeting. Show me a test you've written. Show me some of the most difficult code you've got that you have to work with. And I can read that quite quickly and advise that, this is some of the techniques that I think would help you. And then as we work together and I see more of their code, I can usually bring in things that are useful.
That sounds like a very useful technique if you're able to indeed very quickly spot some things on how you can help them just looking at some code. Because sometimes code can be very complex and so it's you need some tools and some metaphors, or probably some ways on how to look and find possible spots to help them with. So that's a cool skill to have, I think. That's nice. Okay, let's move to that next question. What I'm hearing, and also what I see in the community, both on Twitter and other things, is that you're a passionate person. You have a lot of drive. I feel it also here, but when you talk, you really, yeah, it radiates to me. So, do you know where that drive is coming from? Do you know what got that for you?
I've never had a problem with motivation. I've always, I think, although I don't know, I mean, I always worked really hard in school, and I worked really hard at university, and then I worked really hard when I started my job. And I've always I guess the motivation comes from inside me, but also because I get people appreciating what I do. People saying that they like what I did, or that inspires me to go on. It's very normal, I think.
Yes, well, I agree, and many people that have spoken here have that same passion. I think that's true for many people in this society, or in at least in our community. But at the same time, I think we both also meet people that have a lot of less drive, and or sometimes have a drive completely outside of their work, and have a passion that has nothing to do with the work that we're doing, and that's no judgment call. It's just that different. I want to zoom a little bit on what you said. You always had that in school and at university, and you said you were supported, but the support part, you kind of talked about it at work. How was that in school? Was there a big support system as well for what you were doing, and the drive that you had back then?
Yeah. I mean, it's very rewarding when you work hard and you get top grades and the teachers appreciate you. I guess that's. But I mean,
There's also a different dangerous thing to that, huh? Because then you can get into the perfectionist, or that you can get this like, okay, is that a risk for you, or is that something that is not there for you?
I don't think I'm a perfectionist. I think I do enough to get the result that I'm happy with, which isn't necessarily perfection. I don't think that's it. No, when I'm thinking about where my drive comes from, my motivation, I guess it's ultimately I want to try and use all the talents I've got to make the world a better place. I mean, that's kind of
Wow.
perfect. I want to make a difference, and I found that I'm good at software, and I'm good at kind of teaching, and I'm good at speaking, and how can I use that to actually change how things are? Because I can see there's a lot that software is central to in the world, and if we can make software better, then that will change the world for the better, I think. I mean, some people use software for doing dodgy things and bad things.
But you want to do it to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I do. I think we've got enormous challenges, and to make it through the next century without global warming and biodiversity crisis, and all of those things, I actually am really quite worried about. But my skills are in software, and instead of giving up and going on a climate marches and doing that, maybe the way I can change the world is by actually making software development more effective, so that we can develop technology faster and hopefully fix some of these things. And
I'm trying to think of who. I think it was with Jason Jip that I had the conversation. I'm not 100% sure. It was a conversation I had here about the same thing, and the person said, okay, a lot of people think that as a doctor you make a big difference in saving lives, but if you then actually look at the software that doctors are using, and some of the techniques and other things, and engineering, if we can work in engineering and make safer cars and make safer whatever, there is also a lot of life saving that is there. And that's what that person was saying. Like, and I hear a lot of similarity here, that you say, okay, I could go on and do something else for indeed climate change, but if I can make the code run much faster and better and using less energy, then maybe the servers and everything that I'm working with is using so much less energy that it's actually making a bigger difference in the world. So that is indeed a very nice goal to obtain, I think, in a way to help the world becoming better using software and using what, like you say, using the skills that you have. Um, there is a tendency that to say we need to save the world and whatever, but yeah, if you can do it using your own skills and everybody's doing that with his or her skills, then we actually improve the world much better. Um, I would be a lousy surgeon, so if I would say, okay, the best thing to do is save people by operating on people, well, a lot of people would die, so that will definitely not go. Even if it's a good idea, whatever, it's my eye-hand coordination is too bad, so that definitely would not be the good choice. And then, like you say, coding or doing something with your own skills is a lot better. So thank you for sharing that. That's I liked also that what I want to stress it out. What I because you said a very interesting sentence is that you say, okay, I'm not a perfectionist in the sense that I make it good or bad or better, but I'm not go. I do it with the skills I am, and I'm not. What I kind of heard is you don't want to stress out for being even better. If you say already with what I'm doing, I'm already happy with that result. I think this is what I would say is I see a lot of people struggling about it with at a lot of ages. Do you know, is it something that you now have, or was that something that was already there when Emily was 20 years old? Is that something that you know?
Yeah, I think I've always had that knowing when to stop. That this is good enough for today, and there'll be another opportunity to improve it, or maybe there isn't, and it's just good enough. I'm going to leave it now. So like I've written two books that I self-published and finished. The third one on your slide was never finished, and I know that that's unusual to do the whole thing, to write it, to edit it, to do all the publishing. And there were spelling mistakes in my books. There were chapters that I thought, actually, I could write that better. But I thought, no, I'm going to publish this. I want to get it out the door. And I was able to just say, okay, it's good enough. It's going to achieve what I wanted to achieve without being perfect.
And did you, because you published these first two books also on LeanPub, does that mean that if people tell you, oh, there is a spelling mistake on page 11, that you would go back and change it then? Or did you say, could you leave it and say, no, it's finished? Or how does that work for you?
Yeah, so I did fix some of those kinds of errors. There were a bunch of small things. So I had a very kind reviewer who sent, I mean, I think more than one, who just sent me, look, you've missed all these things. And I was able to fix that. But people also offered me feedback. I think I could give you more feedback about rewriting this section or, doing a bigger change. And I was like, thanks, but
not that. Yeah, okay.
I'll fix that in the next book. It's I'll have to write another one where I do that better. This book was good enough as it was.
I'm asking because it's one of the challenges I also encounter in parenting with my daughter that is struggling is doing rather well, okay, in school, but some of the reports that we recently had was like, I feel that you can actually do this better, and she was able then to say back to me like that for one of the first times in my life, I'm able to put the bar not too high to actually accept that this is good enough for me. And so now you give me back, and I was like, wow, if you can already at age 15 say like, okay, this is the bar I want to reach, and I don't want to stress out and whatever, because then it can become an unhealthy habit, which she didn't want to have it. And that's why I'm so interested in that topic, because I think it's what a lot of people struggle with. And I definitely was not able to do that at age 15, probably not even at age 25 or 35. So yeah, I'm learning from both of you hearing that, because it's indeed I needed agile and extreme programming to learn that. So releasing every sprint and then saying, okay, well, I do it with the best quality I currently see, but I'm not going to polish it until the end and never release it, but I'll just publish it. And lean pub for me in writing is really, really good. It's like, okay, I publish it, and then somebody sends me an error, and like 10 minutes later, there is a reversion, a new version of that book. I will probably not send it out to everybody who bought the book, but everybody who once in a while downloads a new version will see it. Or if they tell me, oh, there's an error, I can say, okay, I fixed that already. You can download that version, and it's something that I think a lot of tools help us these days that we didn't always have in the past, of course. So it's really nice to see how you integrated that in a lot of things in your life. So that's also a very big inspiration, I think. Let's move to that next question, and this is basically your moment to brag. What do you consider your biggest achievement? I have no idea. Is it easy for you to brag? Because for some people, when I ask it, it's like, "Oh God, I'm really bad at that," and others are like, "No, no, that's fine. I'm good at that." So, is that easy for you to do that?
I don't know about easy, but I don't. I can. What I think my greatest achievement, apart from my having children and raising them, is probably this most recent book that I managed to publish, and because it's not just the work writing the book, it's the fact that I couldn't have written it without the career before that. What's in the book is what I've learned in my whole career, basically. And I couldn't have written it without all that experience and all the things that I've learned. And so I guess that was a very concrete thing that I could hold in my hand and say, this contains all the wisdom I've gathered in my career so far. And then that it's actually been received quite well, and I've been asked to speak at conferences. And I think so the next biggest achievement was I was asked to keynote at the Craft conference in this year. So that was a big confirmation that I have ideas that people want to listen to and experiences that people can relate to. So yeah, I think that's kind of professionally what I'm
that's really nice, because like you say, it's a kind of, I don't know, yeah, it's about everything you've learned in your life, and then people tell you like, okay, everything, well, professionally life, of course, well, even then personal might be included as well, what you learn, but everything you learned over the past years, that's now on paper or in digital format, and then people say, oh, please come talk about it, because we really like what you've written there. And so that's nice. And then having indeed a lot of people in the community talking about it and saying, Emily, this is basically a nice piece of work that's indeed is something to be proud of. And so that's so thank you. And I'm happy that you can share that and that you can see that as an achievement. Because like I said, some people really have a hard time and looking at and being proud of that, where especially if it's a kind of part of the whole life well, you're hopefully not at the end of your life, but still everything until now, it feels like, okay, this is a nice I don't know, chapter of your life, and saying, okay, this is that part what I've learned so far. So that's nice. Wow. Let's move to the next one, and it's also about things you've learned over the years, or at least something you do now. Do you have any personal agility tip to share? Is there anything where you would say, okay, this is what I do, or that you want to share to people, something?
So I was a bit unsure what to say here, because it sounds like a personal productivity tip, but I think what I want to talk about is approval testing, because it's this is when Jeff and I started talking about this style of testing back, I think we first started talking about it even like XP 2002, and the reaction we got was that, well, that's not agile, that's not unit testing, and I've spent so long trying to find better ways to explain it, because it really is an agile way of testing, and it really does support refactoring, and it does support good agile ways of working. And I guess so my personal agility tip is that if you haven't heard of it and what it is, then give it a chance. And I feel like this is one of my regrets, that I haven't managed to talk more about this, and I hope I'm going to talk more about it in the years to come. So my next book is going to be about approval testing, and it's going to be to try and explain this thing, because there's this idea that you have to have small unit tests, and that's the only way to write code in a good way. It's a good way to write code. I like unit tests, but it's not the only way. Larger tests using approval tests are actually quite good too.
It's the phrase when you just said it. That's not agile. It's something that I'm rather allergic to, because the phrase itself is for me completely not agile at all. I mean, as if there is one definition and that's the only way how you can be in a certain way. By definition, that feels wrong to me. Because, and even if it's good or bad, I mean, there's always things that people can learn from it, and by just saying this is not agile, they don't even want to learn from it, and
I paraphrase, but
yeah, of course, but it's reaction that I would say the last 4 or 5 years happens much more on multiple levels, if it's about frameworks or about other things. And yeah, I might be allergic to some frameworks, or I might be not liking some parts, but there is always something that we can learn, even if it's from the marketing side or whatever. And yeah, there is definitely things that you can, and like you say, maybe you haven't found the right words to convince people, and to see what can we learn from that. That kind of way of
I'm finding better ways to explain it, and I think there's a lot of value there that could help a lot of people who struggle to write unit tests for example, legacy code, would be better off with a different style, a different approach that is not talked about enough.
And because when you talk about legacy code, you mean if you want to write tests for a larger chunk of software that's already there, and then you need to, one way or another, figure out if I change it, does the software still do what it did before, something like that.
Yeah, that's the big challenge with legacy code. Often you need to change it, and you need to do it safely, but there aren't any tests, and it's really hard to add those tests because there are no units. Of the classic unit testing kind of size and style, because it wasn't built with that in mind. It wasn't built with testability as a first order concern. So you get this catch-22. You need to change it, which means you need tests, but in order to get tests, you need to change it. So the approval testing is like, okay, well, just try and get us a larger piece, even if it's like quite a large piece. I want you to put that in a sandbox. Cut off the dependencies, and I need to write. I've just invented this term, sandboxing, to describe this thing. The word, of course, existed before, and I need to explain that better, because this is what Jeff has been doing so successfully for so many years, and I haven't been able to, I think, communicate what it is he does that works so well with this situation.
And yeah, especially because legacy code is something that is there for a long time. I mean, that won't go away.
Yeah.
Of course, hopefully, if we get better and do a lot more TDD and whatever, then all of our software will have that number of tests that we needed less. But it's just an illusion to think that that we will never have any legacy code without tests and stuff like that. Let's say it's a nice dream. And I hope we get closer to it, but there will always be parts that haven't been tested well enough, or that,
Yeah, and this is one of the techniques for handling that. And then there's a bunch of other things that come with the legacy code, and the tools, and the environment, and the culture, and the skills, and it's not enough just to come in and say, right, do approval testing, that'll fix everything. But it's, I think, a piece of the puzzle.
Well, there is a reason why the software is written the way it was written, and then we come into the whole culture part. Of course, that's the different kind of part. But at least I like the the way you phrase it, because there is that culture part, but that is hard to change. But if you don't have any safety net, like you already used the word safe multiple times here in the way to test things. If you don't have any safety net, it's rather dangerous to start changing stuff, because that things will blow up at one point or another. And if you do that in a way that customers are impacted, or that whatever people's lives are impacted, to talk about real dangerous stuff, yeah, then they will never go for whatever technique you want to do, because it's just too dangerous. It might be costing lives, it might be costing money, it might be costing the life of the company, whatever. People, their jobs might be at risk. Of course, people won't do that. So we need a lot of help there for these people. And so what I'm hearing is that this kind of testing can help to create some kind of safety net, one way or another.
Yeah.
That's nice. So I hope you succeed in bringing that message much more. So yeah, you said in the beginning, I'm not sure what kind of tip you want. And actually, the reason why I don't want to put too much baggage around that is because I really like people to interpret that question in any kind of way. And some people see it pure as a productivity tip, some people and something else. And your space is in this kind of thing. So yeah, so that's really nice to bring this kind of thing. So thank you for sharing. It's something that, well, I won't say only you, but you brought it. So that's nice. Let's move to the next one, and remote working. And well, I assume that you did, just like many others, you worked during the whole COVID period remote. But did you work remote before? Did you do some remote work with your clients?
No, basically not. So before the pandemic, I was in person at clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much in person. And the pandemic changed that, of course, overnight, and it was fantastic. I really realized actually programming and pair programming and talking about code and working with programmers goes really well remote. Even teaching, it took maybe a little while to get the tools and stuff set up the way that I wanted it. But now, even when I go back to in-person teaching, I'm using all the remote tools. I'm getting the best of both worlds. And I don't miss the traveling. And suddenly I can get all these clients that I would never have got clients before in Germany and the UK and Austria. And I'm finding that suddenly the market for what I'm doing is huge.
Because you don't need to travel, and because basically you can say, okay, I can teach you for an hour, for half a day, whatever, without needing to spend an extra half a day or a day in planes. So that makes it a lot cheaper, both in time wise and money wise, I assume.
Yeah. So
and also,
everything is remote now. All my work, basically. I mean, I went to an in-person training event in London, but that was partly because I wanted to go to the UK. But I didn't need to do that, and I think I'm going to be quite selective about the events I actually travel to. And really,
that is something I hear a lot, that people say it's now much more a conscious choice. Do I want to go somewhere in person or not? And like you say, there is value in both of it, but before that was basically not a conscious choice. Our default brains were wired to say, okay, I want to teach, let's go together and let's sit together on the same computer. It kind of reminds me of a picture I saw of who was it? Brian Merrick with, I can't come up with the other person, but they were sitting in facing each other. So this is a picture that's more than 10 years old, but they were talking about pair programming, but basically having both of them sitting in a chair watching each other. And they said that what was nice about that kind of pair programming is that they didn't only look at the screen, because there was still some screen sharing happening, but they could also see the face of the other person. Where normally, if you would pair program, you would sit next to that person and you would need to look there to see the face, but you would not see the face all the time. And with these remote tools, what I'm hearing from you, or maybe it's not exactly what you say, but you have at least that opportunity to look at the face for the person you're working with, and without having to do the, of course you need to have your screen set up, and that, because that's what I'm hearing, you have set up all these tools. So what is something that you use as tools or other tips that you want to share?
Oh, tips for remote working. So I like, I've got quite skilled using Miro, the online whiteboard, and I'm finding that I like to put everything in there, in even my slides. I mean, although I'm not, because I haven't found a good way to fix my notes yet. Mm-hmm. But just having the everyone's attention in one tool and not having to then hop out to another tool to do the slides, and then hop back for the exercises. Just putting everything in there. That's one thing I've been doing.
But then when you would code, you would still move to an editor, I assume.
Yeah. So that's, and then I've got an online coding environment that I set up for the trainings. That's I haven't. I'm hopefully going to share that soon, but at the moment it's and it's not working perfectly. I think it could work better, but yeah, it just I realized that.
So that's something you created yourself, that you set up, or no?
With my colleagues at Pro Agile. I can't take all the credit at all, but it's JetBrains have got this product called Projector, where you can run an IDE in a browser. And it's real time, so that everyone who's looking at that page in the browser, they're seeing all of the things in real time, all the buttons being clicked, all the text being typed. And they've just said they're going to discontinue this tool, which I'm a bit like, what? This is the best thing. It's not perfect, and I can kind of see that they want you to use other tools that they've also developed. But for training, it's so easy. I can set up the machine in advance, so it's in exactly the right position with the tests already on the screen, failing or passing or whatever I want. And then when it comes to the training, I just give the URL to the participants, and they can just start typing code and running the tests straight away. They don't need to install anything, and they can all see what each other are doing.
So immediately they're in the right environment. You don't have to worry about if things are wrongly set up on their computer, because that's typically, I've done 5 years of development training in .NET in the early 2000s, and sometimes you could lose half an hour just having things working on the computer, because people bring their own computers, and then for whatever reason there was something not good installed, and it can take you a half an hour is probably the minimum time.
Absolutely. I think you need double the amount of time for the exercise if it's on their own machine. It's
And so with that, you kind of skip it, and okay, there is something else in learning you how to set up your environment. That's a skill on its own, I would say. But if you're teaching, you want people to focus on this particular thing that you're teaching, and you don't want to focus on because of course, what people remember is it got difficult to get started, but that had nothing to do with your exercises. That got to do with the way their machine was set up, and because whatever reason that. And especially if you're training, well, in my experience, sometimes you're training people that have a lockdown computer because they're working in a bank or whatever, then it's horrible because you can't do anything. And so with this, you can teach people to work in a different environment. So we should probably set up whatever, a Patreon or something, to make sure that this company keeps creating that software, keeps offering that, because that's what I'm hearing. So that's definitely a link to share. At least we don't know how long that will still be available, but at least that people can learn about that. But it feels like there was something else you wanted to share, because you talked about Miro. Is there something else you?
Yeah, so those were the two things, Miro and the JetBrains Projector. That's what I'm basing all my training on now, and it's working well for me.
Great. That is nice to hear. Okay, let's move to that next question. What is a book that you have read that you want to talk about?
So you gave me this question in advance, and I talked about. I got this request from Dion Stewart and Joel Tosi to write the foreword to their new book, and so
this is the old book. This is
yeah.
not this is the current book that they have, but they're working on a new book. That's not the book.
So that's the previous book, and the new book is a follow up, and it's called Coaching for Learning, and I think it should be out any day soon. Basically, it's I'm not quite sure what's holding it up, but it's somewhere in the process of being published. So I read this book back in like August, September, and the draft that they gave me, and I wrote the foreword for it. And I think they've done a good job. It's intended to be a guidebook for technical coaches or even less technical coaches, people who coach agile as well. But there's definitely a congruence between what their advice is for technical coaches and what my advice is and my experience. So I think they coach more broadly in the topics that they coach than I do, but they've got a depth of experience of doing this kind of coaching that really comes across.
And in that sense, you're well, you talked first about learning from Ken Beck, asking Ken to write your forward, and now you're already next level. You're being asked to write the forward for someone else as well.
I was so surprised. I was like, really? But they seem to want me to do it. So yeah, no.
Well, their original book made me think about your book as well. So when I originally saw it, so I see a link and I see similarities on how the three of your brains work. It's probably not fully correct, but at least you move around in the same spaces. So yeah, I'm not surprised that that's the kind of thing that. So yeah, it's nice.
It definitely. I mean, I'm a fan of their work, and it seems they're a fan of mine. So this is a great combination.
And that's how we all build on each other and paying it forward. You were not sure if you were able to talk about a book that was not out. So you mentioned another book that is already out that you want to talk about. You still want to mention that?
No, I don't remember which one I said. Oh yes, I think that this one. Yes, Korokov's book about unit testing. Yes, now this is a good book. I was really pleased to read this. And I think he's understood a lot of the problems with unit testing and suggests good heuristics and solutions and ways to write unit tests. I think he does a good job of distinguishing between the school of TDD that uses a lot of mocks and the one that doesn't, at least in the way it's practiced. I'm not sure that the original, Steve Freeman and Nat Price, who kind of invented the whole mock approach, would recognize what Korokov is talking about as the approach they invented. But it is the approach to mocking that I see when I'm out in companies and I'm looking at tests. And I think Korokov does a good job of pointing out the problems with that style of unit testing.
It's nice that you mention it also, because for some people that, well, like me, I've learned a lot about unit testing back in the early 2000s. So I'm no longer an active programmer, or not enough. Actually, I want to try out some more. But I've missed a lot of that. So it's really nice also to hear that there are still new books that written and look about, because indeed I can't come up. It's somewhere the book that you mentioned about Steve Freeman, and so I have their book, and I've learned a lot about it. Even if at that time I think I was already not, when I read it, I was not programming anymore. But it's good that there are new books that are actually indeed showing the different, how do you call it, schools of unit testing and comparing it, and what is good and bad, and that we can learn from it. Because that's for me is also progress is about, it's looking back at the history of what happened there, and then continue learning. It would be nice if everybody would keep reading Ken's book, but somehow a lot of people don't only know the books that have been written in the last 2 years or something like that. So then it's good that there are other people writing about the previous books and some of the other things. So that's yeah, that's and it's good also that people that have learned some things that can bring it back and share it. So that's really nice. So
Yeah,
thank you for keep talking about that book as well, because I think it's one of the things I've noticed is that we need a lot more in the agile community. There is it feels a little bit that there is not enough talking about technical. The whole discussions about technical parts of agile, it seemed to have been moved to other kind of conferences than the pure agile conferences. And for me, I think it's really important to keep that alive and to keep people, yeah, realizing that agile, you need technical excellence if you want to do that. Whatever you're doing. So without technical excellence, and I think everybody who was doing agile in the early 2000s knew that. Even the people who wrote Scrum, they said it out loud. You need technical excellence. But now we seem to have moved to a whole new generation of agile coaches that don't always realize so that that's why I'm really grateful that you are mentioning all these names and the people that are doing that, and you're part of that generation. I think that are keep fighting that fight, I would say. Um, okay, do you want to add something?
I just wanted to pick what you said there about agile losing its touch with technical excellence. I guess I stay technical because I see this as the maybe it's just because I'm a bit of a techie, but the real innovation with agile for me was the technical practices, and that's I couldn't believe that part suddenly got washed away in the agile movement. And so one of the things I'm trying to do with the whole technical coaching that I promote and I write about and I put out materials for coaches, I want to encourage there to be more technical coaches who can actually do this and encourage all those technical practices in agile. Because I kind of see that today, if a manager in a company of the kind I work with wants a scrum master, they can get on the phone and within a few days they'll have a new scrum master that they can hire as a consultant, and they know how much to pay a scrum master, they know what to expect from them to do the job, they know what qualifications to look for. It's easy for them to hire a scrum master. And my thought that if instead they wanted to hire a technical coach, probably none of that would be true. They wouldn't know they wouldn't be able to find one, they wouldn't know what to pay them, they wouldn't know what to expect them to do, they wouldn't know what qualifications that person should have before they hire them. And that's kind of, for me, kind of unnecessary friction between organizations and getting the kind of technical coaching help that they need. And those are all problems that seem to me that could be solved, and that's what I'm trying to solve.
These people all have different names, and yeah, when you talk about technical coaching, I immediately think indeed about a lot of the things that you teaching teams how to improve their code, and with testing and a lot of other things that you need to set up on the technical level. But when indeed I look inside companies, when they talk about coaching at technical level, they almost always think first about, okay, we want to learn that language and we need someone who's really good in, and doesn't matter if it's C# or Java or Rust or whatever, doesn't matter. But they only think mostly about the languages, where in my mind, basically you can do it in almost any language. And of course, it's best if you have learned the language and if you know the tools a little bit. But once you got that mindset, then they can give you another language and you can, together with the developers, figure out together a lot of that on how that works. At least that's it. And I see you nodding, so I assume that that's rather correct. But for technical things, that's not what they're looking for. And that is indeed a shame. Yeah, I think we can probably talk for days about why that happened and what it, but it's definitely, it's a reality today, and it's something that is a shame. There is a lot of good things about the fact that the Scrum masters and other people are much more available because it helps at multiple levels.
Yeah.
we can discuss about quality, that's something else, but at least that part, and that was 10, 15 years ago, that was also not true. Then definitely they would not understand what the Scrum Master was. That is much more solved today, I think. But we moved the needle has moved completely in the opposite direction, and that's definitely not healthy.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying we shouldn't have Scrum Masters, absolutely, and it's a good development, but we lost the technical coach part somewhere along the way, and I want it to be just as easy to hire a technical coach as it is to hire a Scrum Master.
Yeah, and if that's one of the advices, I'm asked these days. I'm much more hired by larger corporations, and there's then I would say a team of coaches. And for me, it's not necessary that all these coaches have experience with development. But if you have 10 coaches and none of them have technical experience, then you're in trouble, because you really need, as a team of coaches, you need to understand what are the challenges. I need to do that. And maybe you don't need to code anymore. I don't sit enough. I should actually sit more behind the computer and help. But if I work with a team and a developer tells me this is not possible, I can pull up a chair and say, okay, let's show me the code and let's look into that. And we need to have much more people that are able to do this and then go the next level, like what you're doing. Because if we are talking about making things large changes, at some point they will run into the technical problems. If you don't have that safety net, then a lot of the advice that Scrum that agilists are giving is rather dangerous. I mean, you cannot just refactor and change a lot of things and go very quick iterations if you don't have a safety net. That's just dangerous. So we need much more people like you and that can able to do that. And so I applaud you for having that kind of, like you say, having that profile being well known and be much more available for people that they. It's not like we want them to put them off the shelf, but it's a little bit what you say. We wanted to make it easier for people to find them.
Yeah.
So thank you for still adding that. I think it's really important. I want to move to the next question, and for me one of the most interesting ones is there a question that I didn't think of and that you think I should also ask you?
So you should ask me what I'm about the Salmon Technical Coaching Society.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that.
So this is a not-for-profit organization that I founded together with some others. There's 6 of us in the society at the moment.
That's the URL, if I'm correct, huh?
Yes, that's the website. That the society owns the URL, and it owns the copyright on the phrase Salmon coaching. So you can't say that you're providing Salmon coaching services unless you're I don't think we would stop most people from saying it if they were saying it in a good way, but the society exists to kind of protect that as a concept and as a brand, and to provide a place to go to find technical coaches. So the idea is that members of the society are people who I and the other members trust to do a good job as technical coach. And membership is by invitation. And members are expected to contribute to that website with materials for other technical coaches. And they're probably people that we work with and would recommend. So there's only 6 of us at the moment. So it's a kind of small early beginnings, but my hope is that other technical coaches will want to join and will contribute and be invited, and that this will grow into something that could actually become something, a place to go to find coaches, a place where technical coaches seek out to find other coaches and sources of materials. Because that's one of the things. I do a lot of teaching, and I have to come up with a lot of materials, and I find that can take a long time. But if somebody else has already designed an exercise, it takes a lot less time for me to then come up with that training materials. So that's one of the reasons I've been sharing all my exercises for, forever.
Quite some while.
Yeah. If you look on my GitHub, you'll find quite a lot of materials that I put them out there open source, because I find that it gains me more than it costs.
Well, you've written it already and you use it, and probably by sharing it, people, again, you talk about people sharing you typos in your books. This is something similar in your exercises. If you overlook something, somebody might tell you, or they might port it to a different language or whatever, and then it helps both of you. So it's, I really like that. That's one of the things I appreciated about your code and everything that you're. So for me, it's in the spirit of the agile community. It's looking like, okay, how could we help each other? You said right from the start, you're standing on the shoulders of Kent. You're standing on the shoulders of your husband that basically helped you out, or well, put you is maybe the wrong word, but that kind of invited you to come into this world, and you learned from a lot of people in the community, I assume. So you're just paying it forward. And you're not just doing that now at this age, but you have been doing that for a very long time, I think. Yeah. So for me, the website and that society that you're talking about, it's the next level. You kind of said it as an excuse. There's only 6 of it, but for me, it's also kind of a quality mark. It's like, okay, we just start slowly, and we want to. You're not. I don't think you're looking for a very quick spread. I heard you before. You said, okay, I want people to be able to find these people. So at some point, it should be spread more and easier for people to find it. But it's not like you want to grow as quickly. No, you want to have it that quality level that people know in a couple of years, if they're talking about technical coaches, that they can say, oh yes, I remember there is that society where we can look for and find people, and basically it's a kind of a stamp that says, okay, if you find someone that's related to this and he's invited to that community, that basically means that there's a lot of people there that tell you, and maybe you, Emily, you might not be available to work, but if I go to the website and I see someone else that is in that community, it basically, for me, it's kind of says, okay, if Emily and her friends said that this is a person to be good to work with, then I would basically just hire that person without much thinking. That's a little bit your hope. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of my hope, that it's I'm looking at this thing, as I mentioned before, with why is it so easy to get a Scrum Master, and a part of the success of that was the certification, and I don't want to replicate that. So I'm looking at, okay, so can we do something which is a little more meaningful, a little harder to obtain, like a membership of the society that could act in that same way as a marker of somebody who actually knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in the beginning, the Scrum training, not the Scrum Master certificate but itself, but just the Scrum training, it was not that many people that have it. Now it's been grown and it's really an industry. I don't want to go too much into that, but it became much bigger than I think even they expected in the beginning, with good and bad things. But at least it helped at a certain level. And that's kind of what I'm hearing. It tells you, okay, there is a level. It's similar. It's kind of the T-shirt that I'm wearing, the pair coaching T-shirt. When I originally created the website, I created a T-shirt, and I have some coffee mugs of this, and I gave away T-shirts that for people that I've worked with, that I co-trained with, and something, and I did it without much thinking, because I just bought 500 T-shirts and I'm giving away. And at some point, a friend of mine told me, like, if I see someone at a conference wearing that T-shirt, it's a kind of a brand that, okay, this is a person that Eve has worked with, so that's an interesting person to talk to. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't even realize that sometimes something as simple as a T-shirt is kind of saying, bringing a message and a brand about that. And I hear this, that you have much more thought about, okay, what do we want to do? And this is, what that brand is bringing about technical coaching. So I really like that you, well, of course, yeah, you have been around and have been looking a lot at on how to solve that. So I really like how you addressing that problem. So that's it's a nice way.
So thank you for that story about the t-shirts. That's really encouraging. Yeah.
Well, it's yeah, I can go on for long, but we'll do that at another moment. But it's a coincidence I'm wearing it right now, just when I'm talking. Okay, I want to move to that next question, and I think you also have some interesting answers there. So, who do you think I should ask next? Because we talked already about a few interesting people, and definitely I'll mention all of them in the show notes. But is there anyone particular that you want to invite here to start?
Yeah, so I want to suggest you interview Dave Farley. He's he's been around a long time as well in this industry, and he's someone that I admire his work, and I think he's got a lot to share, and I'm really impressed with his YouTube channel and the success that's had.
It's amazing. I mean, if you would ask me 3-4 years back, there was already a lot of content about agile on YouTube, but most of it was just rubbish. If you just look for product ownership, for example, or Scrum Master, you can find more than 1,000 videos, and most of them are like really crappy, both technically, but also what they're explaining. And then there was that one video from Henrik Nieberg that I kept pushing people to, because that was one that explained product ownership, for example, really well. But a lot of other stuff that you could find on YouTube about Agile was not good. And then all of a sudden, Dave started a channel, and that kind of blew everybody away on an even more hard, on a technical level. It's been fun. It's entertaining. There's a lot of things that he's doing, engaging with the community, asking things on Twitter and using it in his videos, and making it also the fun he's making with the t-shirts that he's wearing, and a lot of things. It's just fun to watch. It's entertaining. He has really good opinions, technical about some companies, or about when things go wrong in a technology, whatever. He's openly discussing things, and so it's been really fun watching it, and growing an audience, because when I started this channel, my children were laughing when you say, yeah, Dad, you and your 20 agile friends, they will watch it, and that's about it. And I don't care. The goal for me is not to have thousands or whatever followers. That's not the goal. It's more to spread the message for the people. But if you then watch what Dave is doing, so many people really engaging, so many really good content, that's like, wow, that's the next level, and on a technical level, because that's the hardest thing. And it's not that there's no technical things on the internet, and there's definitely also technical stuff, people learning how to program and whatever, but he's doing it, and he's, like you say, he's one of the experts writing the original book about continuous delivery, and so there is a lot of knowledge there that he has worked on some really interesting hardware and software that he can bring, and that he just is, he can share, and it's really interesting. So I'm really looking forward. He was already on my list, but like most people on my list, I wait for people to invite them, because I cannot, well, that list is just too long, so I just look for excuses to invite some people. So I'm really happy that I can invite Dave and have that conversation. So thank you for inviting him. And thank you for your time. It's already almost 9 o'clock now. I know you shared before you're not a night person, so I think it's about the right time to close it off. So if people want to contact you, what is a good way to contact you?
So on the samancoaching.org website, there is a contact form that should reach me. I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter and Mastodon now.
I'll put the LinkedIn here as well, the previous one I added. Twitter, I didn't prepare, because today we have no idea what will happen with Twitter. So that's why I didn't add it
Yeah,
anymore.
so I'm on Twitter much less than I was. It seems, yeah, I've been on Mastodon for the last few weeks, and I'm liking it so far. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've been gradually growing into it and learning it since a couple of, I think about a week or two. The Agile Alliance has a Mastodon server as well, which I'm really happy that they're using. Well, because one of the things they have, maybe exaggerating, they have some money so they can invest in. I do think we need to have some, for Mastodon to work for me, you need to have some communities that sponsor these kind of services, because it will become very expensive at some time. At least if it's catching on, which it looks like it's catching on, and it's very nice to have it on a server in people's homes, but that's not sustainable in the long run. So I think it's really good that we have communities and things like the Agile Alliance that are investing in it and helping the other things to grow. So that's why I'm really happy that they did that as well. And so there is of course a few others, but I think one of the nice things that I like about Mastodon is that they have kind of different ways, servers have different rules and code of conduct, and you can go to the ones that you like, or that you think, okay, this is the kind of code of conduct that I support, that I want. You have servers that say, okay, we prefer people, or we watch out for if there is racism, if there's sexism, or whatever. We block these kind of things, and there might be other servers that don't care about that, but then that these are probably not the servers that at least not the servers that I want to be on, and then it's good. You can really look for what's the kind of code of conduct that a server is supporting. So it's I think that, or at least I don't know for you, but that for me is why it feels much nicer to be there. That's
I just notice I find more stuff I want to read on there than I do on Twitter. So.
interesting. Yeah, and the last few, I haven't blocked my Twitter account, and yeah, I'm really wondering what I will do, because of course there is a risk if you stop your account that other people will just take over that account, and that will there is a risk there. So I haven't stopped it, but like you say, I have used it a lot less, and I'm much more indeed looking at Mastodon and looking for, and the tools, that's the advantage of a web. You can basically, or even the apps, you can much quicker swap these days. And of course, we miss our audience because there's a lot of people that we follow. So that might be, but that's, I think, temporary. So it might be moving. So we'll see where things go. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful conversation. I still hope you still have some energy left for the rest of your evening. It at least it gave me a lot of energy, so it was really nice to hear your passion for the craft, for also creating that community. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been great.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.